single thing in the world, which you can't do. Can they see the slides or they can't?
Everybody should be able to see. For some reason, your computer was. But don't worry about it because we still got it.
Okay. So basically, I will talk about each thing, and feel free to stop me, obviously. So I've been here a long time, and at the beginning, I had 30% research time, which I thought was great. I'm like, oh, this is so nice. The institution is giving me 30% research time, which was very nice and generous, and was completely protected without me I didn't bring any funding with me. So that was actually better than I could get anywhere else. Whereas my understanding is back in the day, you could get more protected research startup time for an institution. But actually at the time when I started this, 30% time was the best I could get anywhere for protected time, and then was able to get small Nemours Foundation funding to buy my reagents and stuff like that. But with 30% research time, it actually took 6 years to get my first external foundation grant. And so 30% research time was probably not advantageous to me because there were so many, oh, hello, welcome, please feel nice. Okay. Why? Because I might eat your lunch. If you sit next
Would you like a snack?
No, but thanks for offering. I had a bagel at like 10:30, that Einstein. It was probably not enough time. And as you guys will probably all realize, the clinical work from 70% clinical time spills over into 30% research time. So I didn't have enough admin time to let this 30% be absolutely clear of people needing me. So that was in red. So things in red are things that in retrospect were less than advantageous for my research career. And things in green are things that I look back and I'm like, wow, I'm glad I did that. Oh, look, something green. So my first external grant was from the Arthritis Foundation. And that was awarded on the third submission. So now you might think, well, why does she think that's so great? So what I am learning in this field from lots of wonderful mentors who I have now is that perseverance is one of the biggest things you need. So if I, let's say after the first one, I was like, whoa, my score was not good, and didn't put it back in, well, then I never would have gotten it. And then after the second one, it went up substantially, but didn't quite make the line. And I was almost not going to put it in the third time. So I'm like, well, why bother? Instead, I said, okay, I'm just going to look at every single thing that they recommended, and I'm going to try to do it. And I'm going to put this in, and I did not expect to get it, but I felt like I should just do it. You could only do 3 times for them. NIH, you can now only do 2 times. You used to be able to do 3. And I'm like, let me just do it. And then I couldn't believe it. And it turned out to be like one of the top 2 pediatric grants, top 2 scored pediatric grants with one of my other friends, because it's a small field, pediatric rheumatology. But like, if I hadn't put it in, I never would have gotten it. So perseverance, definitely needed. Now, another thing along the road that has really helped me was fostering local support. So there's 2 lovely Delaware foundations who started out giving small grants. One over the years has given me $50,000. The other has given me $40,000. Now, when running a lab, and my lab actually costs about $200,000 a year to run because it's bench work, and I have, my research assistant, and the reagents are very expensive. But that amount of money has bridged me when I needed it. And has really actually saved me at times when I was running out of money. I was like, oh, I have all this money sitting in the Nemours Fund, and it really helped me. So don't ignore local support, and they're very generous and very satisfying.
So are you talking about like what small foundation?
One is called the Open Net Foundation, but it was specifically, it was a parent of one of our patients who started the foundation. And they don't just donate to arthritis, but they donate to other things as well. So one is called the Open Net Foundation. They approached the Nemours. They approached actually my partner, Dr. Rose, and then through the Nemours Fund. And every time we meet with them like once a year, and then they give another gift, and they're lovely. The other one is the Delaware Community Foundation or Fund. It's fun. They approached the Nemours Fund and said, is anyone doing arthritis research? And since I was the only one, it kind of worked. And then they gave $20,000 the first year, and they just wanted like a 1-page summary, and they gave another 20. And just because people are looking to give something back to the community. So I wouldn't ignore those little things.
Do you think the Nemours Fund people have kind of a list of donors who are interested in certain topic areas?
Good question. Allegedly, but I will give you a very nice person to contact, Mary Hopkins. She's absolutely lovely. She somehow knew that somehow this got assigned to her in the New Morse Fund, and she somehow knew that I was doing arthritis research, so she came to me. But it would be fine to send her an email, and you can even say, oh, AnneMarie was talking about this today and how you've been instrumental in connecting her to the Delaware Community Foundation. I want to let you know about my research in case any interesting donors come along. And she's lovely. Like, she's so nice.
So I do wonder if some donors say specifically, like, my child had this, and
Yes.
I'm interested in donating.
Yeah.
Even though I'm donating to the Moors, it would be great if they went to.
Well, that's what this one was. They were particularly interested in adult RA, but they came to the Children's Hospital, and so they got JIA, and they were fine with it. Like, they read my proposal, and they were fine with it. So I do think that happens. I think people do want to especially give to things that affected their family and their lives. So I think it would not harm to contact her. So then I was on the COBRA grant for about 3 years, which was great, but I really could scrape together, again, only about 25% of time to research due to my clinical applications. And the happy ending of the story is that we figured that out, that basically we needed more doctors. Like me and Dr. Rose, or Carlos Rose, could not see all the patients and then expect me to suddenly have 75% time to do research. And so we were able to hire Mo, which some of you. But being on the COBRA allowed me to get a research assistant. So it depends on what type of research you do, but you probably realize for yourself too, even in non-bench work research, in clinical research, having a study coordinator or having someone who's doing the data entry frees up your mind to think of the hypotheses, to figure out how you answer the question. And so it was absolutely life-saving for me to be able to hire a full-time research assistant who's still with me now, and she's amazing. But before that, I was trying to pipette on my own, which is why nothing was getting done. Like, how could I run experiments, mess them up, and then attempt to write? Do you know what I'm saying? And so having a research assistant, I'd be over there trying to do PCR in Rockland 1, and at the end of the week, I'm like, oh, that didn't work. That sucked. Okay. Next week, I'll try to scrape together 2 days to do this. And so getting a research assistant was key to being able to succeed. Did you have a question there? No. Okay. So,
I don't know if you know this, or if this is a question more for Erin, if there's like a pool of research assistants that maybe aren't completely funded, or you can, you may not have enough funds for like an entire research assistant, but you can spend 10 or 20% of their time.
Yeah. So in the contact is either Greg Stetz or Mark Patrick. So the study coordinators. Sandy Budd just left, but there's Lynn Mars and Alicia Alaman-Fisher, who I love. She helped me with the project when I was able to afford her before. But she's lovely to work with, Alicia Alaman-Fisher. And I worked with Lynn on another project a long time ago too. They're both great to work with. And yeah, you have to bring money to be able to pay them. But even if you need 10% of their time and you could pay for them, then you can have those hours.
The coordinators cost more money.
Right.
So he does have somewhat of a pool of research assistants too. Like, I'm using one person who's mostly on Dr. Gover's study, but buying out some of his time, and he's under Grant technically, or he's under Greg technically. So Greg was the one who said, he may have a little bit of room to help you out.
So he is a research assistant, not a coordinator.
He's kind of an in-betweenish.
Like, he might make a little less than the coordinators.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know there's the nurse coordinators cost a lot more than a non-nurse coordinator.
Right.
And you guys may want to grab one of these so you can make copies, but it goes to, I think, actually, no, Greg recorded something that talks about his services
Yeah.
and the different positions. So he recorded it, he had coughing fit, so he's going to re-record, but that'll be posted on the site so that'll be for you guys to access.
I think there are lots of resources here that we don't always know about. We don't know how to tap into them. You know what I mean?
And I think as we build our
Network.
research efforts, I think hopefully there will be more of those kind of research assistant pools that we can all kind of draw from. That's the hope, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay, so the turning point came with the magical being able to go 75% research. Now, how were we able to do this? One, we hired a new doctor and gave her about 1.5 years to get herself up and going before I transitioned. Like, we couldn't just have Mo come day one and be like, oh, that's great, you're going to see 100 million patients, which she is doing now. But anyway, That's a whole nother talk. And then, so we gave her like a year and a half to get herself up and going. And then I pooled every penny I had to convince both research and the Department of Pediatrics that I was going to be 75% research. So I needed to do this before I could get myself a K. So it's, and basically when you write your K, you're supposed to tell them that whether or not you get funded, your institution's going to support you at 75%. They don't want to hear, they do not want that sentence, the sentence that says, if she gets this, this will allow her to go 75%. They want to know that your institution is behind you as a researcher at 75%, and that it's just nice that the NIH is going to fund you. Do you know what I'm saying? They don't want to be told that basically if they don't fund you, this person is not going to be supported by the institution. So we were able to scrape everything together funding-wise from those small groups, outside foundations, stuff like that, and hire a new doctor, an additional doctor to see all the patients that we have. Now, within that 1 year, this is my very scientific graph, so that as you can see, when I went from 30, it's productivity versus protected time. When I was 30% protected time, I was about 10% productive. And then at 75% protected time, look how fabulously productive I became. There's no data points really, but within that year of being able to go 75, like literally I went January 1st to 75%. I then started presenting at national meetings again, like podium presentations. I finally got my manuscript in and accepted to our top journal, which is Arthritis and Rheumatism. Was able to get an additional private foundation grant. That was a 3-year grant, and submitted the K-23 and got it awarded on the first submission. There was a lot of luck in that first submission. I did not expect it. A lot of good things happened that all came together, which I'll tell you about. But so I was floundering around for 9 years, accomplishing nothing at 25 to 30%. I would give an occasional talk or an occasional poster. I wasn't getting my papers out, and I wasn't getting in additional grants because there wasn't time. You know what I'm saying? And that's what happened. Okay. So what happened on the road to the NIH grant? Dad missed my beautiful mentor, Carolyn Shannon, who I loved. She had been my mentor. She was from genetics. I don't know if you guys know her. She's MD, PhD. Her and, you don't know Jeff Twist? Well, they were MD, PhD people who were here, and they both went to South Carolina. And so she left right when I was deciding. So at the beginning of that year when I went 75%, I'm like, yay, now we're going to put in a K. And she's like, I'm leaving. I love her, but she had to go. So she left. So what did I do? Did I curl up in my office and die? I wanted to, but I didn't. So I said, okay, I'm either going to do this or not do it, right? So I know it sounds like I could be like a TV, whatever, televangelist, whatever. So I wasn't going to have to do it, right? Because that would be a waste of time. So I said, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do this. I got myself off as many committees as I could that were not contributing, right? So I was on almost every hospital committee because I've been here for 14 years, and everyone asks you to be on their committees. And I said, this is what I'm doing for the next 7 months, the best proposal possible. I knew I had 2 chances, right? So I wasn't going to put it in unless it was the best proposal. Some people were pushing me to put it in July. And I said, nope, I will be ready for the October submission. And that's when I'm going to do it, because it will not be my best effort by July, because I knew I had to scramble for a mentor.
What do you feel like is a reasonable timeline for a K?
I'm going to get there.
Thank you.
You're welcome, anytime. But a long time. I think it's at the bottom of this one. So now I had no mentor, but 7 months to do this, right? So I went completely outside of my usual comfort zone and started asking anyone who could help me with advice to help me. So I asked, hey, can anyone recommend? So there's no one here doing my research, right? A geneticist was my prior mentor. So I said, okay, well, Carlos Rosé can still be my clinical mentor, as he has always been, but I needed to replace my scientific mentor. So people gave me the recommendation of Kate Sullivan, who's a MD, PhD, chief of immunology at CHOP, but she happens to be a pediatric rheumatologist. And I don't know her. I emailed her, would you like to be my mentor? And it was like a dying moment for me, because I don't do stuff like that. I'm not that bold, although I might seem it, but I'm not. And so I, told her my project, said my mentor is leaving. I want to submit a K. Would you like to be my mentor? But, can I come up and let you continue? Totally went up, met with her 7 months before the grant deadline. She tried to say yes in that meeting, and I was like, no, don't say yes. Let me, think about it, whatever. And she was totally fine. So I couldn't believe that that things that I would never think of asking for before, I decided, you know what, I'm going to ask people to help me. And I was so surprised. I don't think anyone said no. Or, you know what I'm saying? People want to help you. Luckily, though, this is 7 months. So don't think 7 months you can get a K in, though. So 7 months, I already had my preliminary proposal and preliminary data. And that's why 7 months was okay. If not, I'll say at the end, if you were starting from scratch and you're planning, okay, I would say a minimum of 2 years because you need to get that proposal and you need preliminary data. They claim you don't need preliminary data. You need preliminary data. You got to talk about something. You know what I'm saying? So this was 7 months. I mean, it was a complete rewrite of my proposal, but I at least had preliminary data to use and offer. You know what I'm saying? Okay, then, which everyone will tell you, I worked on my AIMS page absolutely obsessively before I even touched that proposal. And I was starting to panic because my AIMS were not ready. And like it was getting closer and closer and I hadn't touched the proposal. But then I was surprised. Once the AIMS were absolutely hammered, I could just rifle through the proposal and fix it. Do you know what I'm saying? But it was obsessing on the AIM page. And everyone will tell you that because there are some people in the study section who will only read your AIMS page. And if you haven't captured them by the AIMS page, forget it. Do you know what I'm saying? They're not interested in reading the rest of the research strategy. So I did some good things right in that time. I have a little bit of OCD, if those of you, and I choose not to treat it. I don't even know if you can. I read the entire manual because I'm crazy, right? So I was like, okay, I didn't read the entire thing. I did not print the entire thing, but I downloaded. I think it's 800 pages, right? It's the 424 SR, whatever it is.
Plus the other thing.
I don't know if it's 400 or 800. I don't know. So I saved it to my computer, and I went through it, and I printed the sections, but only the sections I needed. I printed, and I went through them, and I read, and I would read them again. And they were things I caught that I was making mistakes. That if I hadn't gone back and obsessively read the instructions, I would have gotten wrong. Things that saved me, like my research strategy was too long and I just couldn't take anything else out. And then I read one little thing that implied to me that your references actually could be taken out and put separately, which my mentor did not even know that. And then I actually just emailed the help desk, they're amazingly helpful. And they emailed back, they're like, nope, you can pull that out, put it here. And then I actually was under for my proposal. So stuff like that you pick up when you read the little details. I then, which is also crazy, since I was in panic mode, right, I Googled how to prepare a K. And you will be surprised how many universities have beautiful PowerPoints that they give to their, postdocs, their fellows, whatever, on how to prepare your K. And I just read right through them, like section by section. Just some of them even have example successful career development plans on it, just to look at them. The other thing, allegedly on NIAID, there's allegedly very good tips on how to write your K. And I think I used that one as well. But even like University of Colorado, they would just have a PowerPoint of someone speaking with lots of great tips on how to do it. So I read those. I probably only spent like a day finding them and reading them. I didn't want to waste too much time, but some good pointers I picked up, like how short some sections should be and how long and what you should concentrate.
Aside from University of Colorado, were there any others that you thought were particularly helpful? Since I'm sure you can find a ton.
I don't remember.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. I just literally Googled.
You see that?
Yeah. Maybe that was the one.
I think they had like example career development.
Yeah. Maybe that was the one I used.
I think it was UCSF because I think they have a big like clinical translational.
They actually have a huge program.
Then along the lines of the OCD, I then made an Excel spreadsheet of what needs to be done. So those of you who are prepared, you did one too?
Not Excel, but
some kind of spreadsheet. The K has many, many parts, right? So there were 11 letters alone, right? And then there are many other small parts. It probably was 100 pages by the end or something. And so I am guilty of not asking people for what I need from them until about 2 days before something's due. And I'm like, okay, I can't do that for this, right? So I said, what needs to be done? When does it need to be done? And then the same thing is like, who do I need to ask to do something for me? Which we'll get to later. Our Office of Sponsored Project, my person was Sherry McDaniel, who has since left. But basically, just letting that whoever your person is, whether it's Mark Patrick or Denise, whoever else is there, just let them know early, hey, I'm planning on putting in a K this month, just so they, or whatever month it is, so they know about you, and will help you start loading things electronically early. It's the same thing. When I needed something from someone else, that's why I had my spreadsheet at the beginning, because I couldn't ask people for things in the 11th hour. I knew anyone, like I could be working on it Sunday night, but I couldn't ask someone else, right? Because it's for me. So I definitely asked people very early for things I need from them. I also just decided that I had completely lost my mind and emailed 3 of my peds rheumatology colleagues at CHOP who I knew had Ks. And I said, hi, love you guys. I don't want to see your science, but is there any chance, hoping one of them would take pity on me and send me their career development plans? All 3 of them are like, absolutely. Here's my career development plan, just to see the structure. So seeing successful ones that you could find online and also successful ones in your field. I couldn't copy them, obviously, but I would not have even thought of the detail, the level of detail they want in the career development plan, and just the resources, like there were resources that were available at Penn. Okay, what comparable resources do we have here that I could put in there that I never would have thought about, like the Delaware Health Science Alliance, all sorts of things that I would not have even thought to put in, but by seeing someone else's structure and seeing how the study section wanted its structure was tremendously helpful. So again, ask people to share. People will share. Or someone's going to say no, but someone will share, right? And no one said no. And one even was like, can I call you? And then proceeded to spend 45 minutes on the phone with me, giving me all sorts of pointers, and then it offered to be on advisory committee for me and is now on my advisory committee. Like, just, I don't know what he's getting out of it, but it's great. I then there was lots of green things, thinking that I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. I did make a mistake on my research strategy. I asked far too many people, all well-meaning and all with good suggestions. And then I was getting very close to it being due. Now I had moved from the Ames page onto the research strategy. Had about 9 people reading each iteration and getting back to me. And then some people, not to be repeated, got a little mad if they didn't see their change, but it was completely opposite of someone else's, and all of a sudden I just had to say, thank you very much, and decided to stick with my mentor, my co-mentor, and that other member of my advisory committee, and that was it. And I just had to say thank you, but I have to limit the input, and I had to be very careful about who I selected. And I was grateful to everyone's help because everyone was helping and pulling for me, but it was too stressful for me with too many conflicting. So I don't know if that's happened to any of you. Do that happen to you?
I mean, I think all the time.
Yeah.
But I've started to learn too to kind of just say, okay,
thank
you.
Yeah, and
Yes.
you decide.
And
You're
then
an adult. You decide.
moving forward,
Mm-hmm.
just ask 1 or 2 people, especially for like when you're in the moment and it's almost due.
Yeah. It was getting close.
It's too hard to ask too many people.
Yeah. And
Everyone has lovely opinions, but they're all going to be conflicting.
Yes.
There's no way that everyone has the same opinion.
Right. And you can't make them work. And some people don't care that you don't use it, but other people will get offended. And you're like, I can't do this. So then limiting input to select people who are truly the right people to help you on this grant. Oh boy, lots of stuff. Oh no, what was that? Oh, I did. Okay. And that's what I said. I listened carefully to every suggestion. I did not get offended if someone thought one section of my grant was terrible or a bad idea. I just said, okay, my job is to put in the best proposal possible. I am going to leave all my defensive baggage at the door, and I am going to hear what they say and weigh it and decide whether to use it or not. So I did listen carefully to what everyone said and then decided take it or don't take it. Then it's funny, the mentor, my new mentor really helped me with this. So we were brainstorming on recommendations at the beginning. And I'm like, oh, this person loves me. Oh, they'll write the nice. She's like, that's great. That person will write a letter that says you're a lovely person. That is not what you need to get funded. She's like, who are strategic people for you to ask that we can ask? And I also went totally out on a limb. I had done my fellowship research at the NIH, and there were 2 people, like the head of translational research and then 1 other people there who they're familiar with my work and they know me to talk to at meetings, but they're not like someone like really, really close. And I would never normally ask someone. And I sent them both emails and I gave them an out and sent them my Ames page, my personal statement, and they both were like, oh, absolutely, we would love to write you a letter, and we're so happy for you. And then they followed during the process. They wanted to know what I got, how I did, and they were very, very supportive. So I just said, you know, these people having their names and their letters on here would be great for my grant. And so let me go outside of what I was comfortable doing and just did it. And, you know, you're sitting there like, okay, hit send, don't hit send, and just like send. Let me just ask them. You know what I'm saying? Now, this is something else I would never have thought of, was offering a template for the letter. So to me, that goes against my 16 years of Catholic school. I'm like, oh, no, you can't offer to do that. They should, you know, write a letter. Out of the 11 letters, literally one person, 2 people out of the 11 said, no, I can just write it. And those were 2 people who knew me very well. And they're like, no, I'll write it, right? The other 9 were like, that would be very helpful. And then you see some of them, right? Because they're in your mentor and co-mentor section. And then you don't see 5 letters of recommendation. You have 5 letters. You don't see those 5. But the 6 or the few, the advisory committee co-mentor that went in that I see, they have really done a nice job with my template. Like they left in my things, made changes to it, and added a lot of their own. But I think just offering the template and having it started for them makes it so much easier for them to just say, oh, I will add how my research and how I know her and blah, blah, as opposed to, oh, I have to start that letter from scratch. I think it really helps people. So I was against it. I was shocked by that suggestion at the beginning. And then I realized, you know what? It's totally fine.
So
you know,
at PAS last year, there was a whole 2-hour seminar on writing Ks. And that was,
wow.
yeah, it was
Okay.
great.
That's
that
awesome.
was the one big thing that the leaders and the people who
Yeah.
had K words got up and said, you're going to write everybody's letters.
Yeah.
You know,
That's what
meaning a template or
fascinating.
even writing good parts of them and then handing them over. So
Only one person
I'm not surprised. by
didn't
that.
want me to write their letter.
Yeah, only one. Yes,
Only
I was
one.
so surprised. They were like, we would love a template. I'm like, yeah, but then it actually was fine. But it is hard to write letters about yourself, especially 11 of them.
It is.
Yeah.
To make them different enough.
Well,
Right,
that's
right.
what the guy, the head of translational research at NIH, when I ran into him in a meeting, I'm like, thank you so much. I'm like, I said, I realized my letter the template I sent you is a little bland. I'm like, do you want me to spice it up? He's like, don't worry. He's like, I already changed it. He said there was a meeting about that on some study section, and someone's letters were clearly all written by the same person, and they were like, he's like, I changed it up a lot so it wouldn't, you know.
But you had those frank conversations with this person.
Yeah.
Over email.
Oh yeah.
And,
It was great.
And who helped you figure out who would be strategically good? Your
My mentor. I sat down with my mentor and we brainstormed. She's like, okay, you know, I knew my past mentor who was leaving the institution would write me a great letter. I'm like, she'll write me a great letter. I knew Vicky Funanich would write me a great letter. I'm like, those 2. Carlos was already in the mentor section, so he couldn't be a letter of recommendation. So then she's like, who else? I'm trying to remember who I asked. Oh, Terry Finkel wrote one for me. So she was chief of rheumatology at CHOP, but now she's our chairman of pediatrics down in Jacksonville, right? And so she had been helping me all along. She helped me get connected with my mentor at CHOP, and she had looked at my Ames page, and I knew that she was behind this research. You know what I mean? She also went to bat for me with Dr. Churchwell when I needed bridge funding. And so, and she was able to talk about the research. So I knew she was familiar with the research, you know what I mean? So she was thrilled to write a letter. And then I asked, you know, she was like, who else do you know from your time at NIH? And I came up with 5 people that I would feel like I maybe could kind of ask. And so we picked the 2 of them whose work was closest related to mine. And those were the 2 I asked, and they were wonderful. Any other questions?
No, and you brought up a nice point too in your template that you can highlight different things that, so you'll have a breadth of different things highlighted amongst your letters.
That is a good idea.
And one of the other things that one of my mentors talked about was when you're thinking strategically about who's going to highlight the relevance of like your research to the field, or who's going to highlight you know your research, like when you think strategically about what are the gaps what are the breadth of things that you need to address, and who's going to fit those.
Yeah, that's very smart.
I haven't quite figured that out yet.
And actually writing the letters allows you to make sure that each person is addressing what you want them to address in a sense.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice that you are able to see everything all together and say, well, I want this person to talk about this and this person to talk about that. So it is hard to write about yourself, especially the statements where you actually have to like praise yourself.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
so hard.
Yeah.
But the stuff about the science
Yeah,
makes sense to
yeah.
think about. So.
Yeah.
Was your letters a place where you addressed the, I guess one of the challenges that I think a lot of people I've heard have is, talking about their productivity, when they haven't been as productive, when how do you address that? Because obviously the whole point of the K is to have productive time, to be more productive, but you have to have some productivity.
Right.
So like, how did you sort of?
Yeah, and that was my biggest issue, was my lack of productivity, which people stated in my summary statement, and they were right. So my productivity has been abysmal over the last 9 years before being able to go 75%. And so basically I did know that it had to be addressed. And so I wrote, this will allow me to shift from being a clinician trying to do research on a very limited time to a clinician scientist able to dedicate significant amount of research. And I said, prior to this time, I was very involved in patient care. Most of my time was used for patient care, and now I want to continue to take care of patients, but shift to doing research to help them in the long term. And it did have to be addressed. Luckily for me, another lucky thing happened is that after I submitted the K, I was able to submit revisions on a paper, which was then accepted before the K was scored, and they let me add that. And that may have been one of the lucky things that came together, because they all commented on that, like in the same sentence that they're saying, she's had, external foundation funding for so many years, and look at her lack of productivity. Oh, but look, she got this great paper out in arthritis and rheumatism just now. And so that truly helped me. And people claim that you need one paper on the topic in your, on your research topic, one paper to be able to put in a K. I think 2 papers would be nicer. All my other papers were not on this topic. So it was good to have the paper accepted on this topic while K was in. It would have been much better to have it in beforehand and perhaps have a second paper accepted while it was in, but that helped. But yes, I think you're best off addressing it.
So the productivity, when you use that word, you're not
Papers.
You're talking about papers, not really like other grants you've got.
Nope, all they wanted papers, because the money meant, me getting the money meant I should have been delivering papers. Do you know what I'm saying? And so they don't care about getting grants. They want productivity needs papers.
Was that just in like your personal statement, or did was that like a mentor?
I think it was in my career development plan, because it was saying, what this would mean to my career development. It was to allow me to be more productive.
I do think though, when I got my summary statement, they did appreciate the fact that I had one source of external funding before the K, and then one source of internal, because the internal kind of says your institution supports you in your research, and then the external says, well, other people think your research is okay too. Yeah. So I think both are important, the publications and the grants.
Yeah.
But you do have to show some publications
from the grant. But I did make sure to highlight that stuff, and the same things like, look, there's local support. People believe in us. You know what I mean? People, which was nice. But they want the managers. And exactly what I said before. If there was someone who was the best person to help me, I just asked. You know what I mean? And I did very carefully polite emails and said, this is what I'm doing. Could you help me with A? Not could you help me do the whole thing, but if that person was the expert to help me with this part, could they help me? I am crazy. I was finished about 3 weeks before the deadline, so I put it away for 2 weeks, and then I submitted 5 days before the deadline, because all of you know from being on ERA Commons, we did not have any big issues, but one could see how there could be electronic issues, and definitely by putting it 5 days before, I knew I was going to get something kicked back, which was that when they piece together all the pieces of the career development plan, it comes out to too many pages, but you really have white space, so then it's really okay. And so that allowed me to email someone and say, it came out to this, and they were like, nope, you're totally fine, we checked it. You know what I'm saying? And so doing it early, you don't want to be doing it at 5 o'clock days too, because then it won't happen. It's terrible. It's terrible. And something will happen to you. You know what I'm saying? Like it'll crash or something. And as I said,
you need to make sure Mark is prepared and knows that that week he's going to devote a lot of his time to you.
Or better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Get OSP involved early. They know the day, the month you're submitting, the day you're submitting, and when you plan. Like, I would have appointments with Sherry, like, I'm coming at 9 o'clock on Wednesday, and we're going to load this and this and whatever. And, yeah. You don't want them to suddenly be on vacation or something, you know, kind of thing. I definitely was, like, Google was my friend. I, like, any resource that can help me. I used ERA Commons. I emailed the help desk. I probably only emailed them twice, but just very succinct, to the point questions, instead of me trying to figure out and guess what they wanted and have something be rejected. I just emailed them a question, and they would send me very prompt, to the point. They always answered my question on the first, you know, their first answer answered me. So I definitely used the ERA Commons help desk and any other resources that I could find. So what lessons did I learn as being a clinician trying to achieve research success? Although I don't have research success yet, but at least I have some money. The productivity is directly linked to truly protected release time for research with no clinical responsibilities. So that was a big mistake of mine in the beginning. Is like, I can do everything. I will do this. I will juggle patients. I will juggle calls. Sure, interrupt me. It's fine. And I was really, like, months would go by and I wouldn't write, or, you know what I'm saying? Sorry. And so really it absolutely has to be, you know, I leave and go across to my office in Rockland 1. You guys can come in here. And so, and people, we switched even our paradigm. Like, we would go to day med infusions all the time. No more. We don't go to day med infusions. First, other people were covering my infusions, and then they realized that my model worked better. And they're like, you know what? None of us are going to go to day med infusion. It was sucking too much time, and it wasn't helpful for the patients. If they need us, they call us. But we kind of had to think about how to relieve me from my clinical responsibilities during the time when I'm supposed to be doing research without interruptions. I definitely found that concentrated time. So I was much more productive over the time, the last almost 2 years that I've been 75%, as opposed to the preceding 8 or 9 years, I was 30%. Do you know what I'm saying? So it was the concentrated time instead of the spread out time, lots of small time. And I actually have, I made just 2 of these. This and the one with my productivity graph were for Jay to take to like chairman's meeting in Jacksonville and Nemours, just because they really actually want clinician scientists to be successful. And so what I was proposing to them is that people should kind of try out for, but if they showed skill and aptitude and desire to do research, that they should be protected for about 2 years at 75% to allow them to put in for these grants. Because you can't even get an external grant without the time to get preliminary data. Do you know what I'm saying? And again, I did not talk too much about mentorship, but I have been tremendously lucky to have great mentors and to have found an outside mentor to replace mine who left, and things that my mentor has already taught me, things that I'm sure allowed me to be successful on this K that I never would have thought of before myself. Oh, and then this is my last slide. But if you're deciding to apply, you know, you first have to figure out which grant mechanism. So there's lots of other things besides Ks, right? Like our fellow just got an F32, which is a small grant, like right after fellowship. There's R21s, which are kind of like really shorter grants, really exploratory, but you don't need that much preliminary data. You just need a little bit of a wild but somewhat plausible idea. So you figure out which one's right for you and your project, and then decide what institution is appropriate for your project. So mine was NIAMS, Institute of Arthritis, Musculoskeletal, and Skin Research, which was an obvious choice for mine. But there are some that I think could go to more than one institute. So you have to figure out which one's appropriate for your project, and you probably can even look at what slice of the tax dollar pie that institute has and how much goes to research. And you can find all this stuff online. I did not do this, but people say you can do this. I was a little shy about emailing, like the program officer.
I got so much very helpful
Yeah, that's
feedback
what
because I
people
was
say.
between 2 different institutions, and I was like, and then the other one was like, oh, this
This
walked me through like the study section. These are the people on it. Do these people seem relevant to what you're doing? And it was very helpful in terms of a validation that my research idea was good, that there was something novel to them, and then pointed out the gaps that would make my application stronger, like you need more publications. And so that's been sort of the focus, and so that was really helpful.
That was very smart that you did that.
Well, a lot of people smarter than me told me to do it, and I finally just did it. So
that's how you learn.
And so I think that was incredibly helpful. And actually, the thing that one of my other mentors said is that when you ask for letters, the fact, to comment on that fact, because it sort of gives external validation that they're investing time in something that at least the program officer thinks might be important, which I didn't even think of.
I would not have thought.
So they commented on the fact that you talked to the program officer.
In the
She
letter
said that when you
template.
ask for a letter, she said you asked you should
You
comment.
tell them.
Yeah,
I
when you
discussed
ask for the letter,
these
like
aims.
you talked, you say your aims. Diane had me work on like for a K, had me work on not a cover, concept paper that had my aims, then had like a brief blurb about my mentors and a brief blurb about my career development plan. And so I sent that to her so she could sort of see all the key parts of the K. And then my other mentor said, when you ask for letters of recommendation to these people, you should say, I have discussed this with the program officer, and they think this is the right institution, and blah 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 blah.
That's
like,
great.
Short and sweet. So it shows that
Kind of validates.
that you've actually gotten farther. You feel like you haven't gotten very far, but like you've gotten farther than you feel like you have.
Yes, and then they also know that institute thinks it's important to fund, which is great. I wouldn't have thought of that.
And the other thing that she said that was helpful was she said if I wanted to, there's some letter that they can put in to sort of on their end to help make sure that it comes to that program officer and to that study section. So it actually, because how you like request something, but then someone skims your aims and tries to figure it out, and there's apparently something they can do on their end to sort of help increase the likelihood that it comes to them.
I didn't know that.
So that was something that was really helpful, and she said, when I submit, to let her know, and if I wanted, she would be happy to put that in for me.
Yeah, take that program.
Yeah.
Because there'll be like 3 in one institution or whatever. So I did not do it. I probably should have done it, and it sounds like it was very helpful too. And as I said, if you have preliminary data and some kind of framework of a proposal, I would say at least 6 months. Even if you already have that, because there's just so much to be done between asking for the letters. And for the last 6 Sundays before it was due, I was here every Sunday. Other than that, I didn't do that much on the weekends, but clinical care was really. And that was even, I had 7 months to do it. But if you're starting from scratch, I would say you start thinking about a K 2 years before you're going to put it in. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's crazy, and that's my email. So that's all I got.
I guess one of my questions is, how did you, with the clinical time, everyone's been very supportive, but my challenge is I still, especially since I supervise residents, there's stuff going back and forth, and I'm the one covering for the continuity. And I feel like I have the responsibility to check Epic, at least once or twice a day, to appropriately supervise and manage things that I'm the covering physician for them that
That was one of my biggest problems at the 30%. And most of it was, there was part was that we didn't have enough doctors. Second of all, it was also me. So I love my patients and I'm pathologically attached to them, and I wouldn't give any of them up. And everyone's like, you need to send a letter, telling them they can see someone else in order. I'm like, no, I'm not giving them up. They can age out at 21, but that's it. Or if they have United Healthcare, they can't come here. But anyway, don't record that. I'm just kidding. So that was very, very hard, and a lot of that was my stubbornness. And then, as I said, when I went at 75%, all of a sudden I was like, you know what? I don't have to be the one doing the fellows continuity clinic. I can't do it anymore. And so because in that clinic, to appropriately have a fellows clinic, she had to have new patients. And I was like, you know what? I can't do the follow-up on new patients anymore. And then I finally spoke up, and we had another doctor, and was honest to myself that I couldn't be good at everything. I was kind of like trying to be a researcher, not doing that, trying to be a fellowship director, which would always get pushed to the bottom of what got done, and then trying to take care of my patients. And I was like, you know what? I can't do all these things. So I finally said, well, I can't do the fellows continuity clinic because I'm not going to see new. I then stopped seeing new patients. Yeah, because I'm trying to fit 14 years of patients into 1 half day a week, which is a whole nother story. We'll talk about
We're
this.
doing half a week.
Well, that's what I was told. I had 2 half days a week written into my K, and that the person at CHOP, who's now R01 funded, but he had been K, and he was on my advisory committee, he's like, don't write that. He's like, well, if you don't do inpatient. He's like, study sections aren't dumb. He's like, they can do math. If you say you're one of 3 docs and you cover inpatient service and you have 2 half-day clinic, he's like, they know that equals more than 25% of your time. He's like, you have to be a half-day clinic. And I talked to him Carlos. He's like, yep, we can do it. And now we have 4 docs now, so I'm 1 week of service a month. And that went through. Like, no one argued about how much clinical time I had. But that was tremendous to condense them all and really kind of my afternoon half days. I'm starting at 10 a.m. So I'm still working on that. But as I haven't seen that many new patients in the last almost 2 years. So my pool is getting smaller as people graduate and not everyone needs follow-up. Once a month, I do access clinic. And that's a half day of news. You know, anyone who has to be in with 5 days. But it's only 1 half day a month.
You don't keep them as your patient.
I do. But not every patient needs to stay with us.
Right.
Maybe 1 out of 4 that come to that need follow-up. And I keep them. Yeah, because I won't let them.
I know, I have that problem too.
It's very hard.
And I'm seeing patients even with 40% clinical time. I'm adding on an extra half day to fill in my clinic. I'm pretty much doing my own surgery now because I can't let go of patients.
Yeah.
Do you do inpatient time?
I don't, so I can get away with that.
Yeah.
But I think I'll have to stop.
You may have to. It was very hard
Was it hard
decision.
to convince them?
No, I know because the lucky thing for me is that I have found this institution has been very supportive of me, especially Carlos. Right. So as my division chief, he's just like he does research on Blau syndrome. So he's only 40% clinical. So he believes in us doing research and improving the lives of our patients. So he has always stood behind me. Jay has been tremendously supportive. So do you know what I mean? I feel like we have the support of the institution. I just wasn't asking for it, and we didn't have a doctor to replace me, right? So once we had a doctor to replace me, and finally the light bulb went off in my head, I'm like, you're being dumb. You cannot see all these patients and do a good job. Yeah. And so I just said, okay, this is what's come to me. I cannot have all these new patients and keep building my practice. I cannot fit my 14 years of patients in and add new. And they were like, fine, it works. But they did say, we do need you once a month for access because everyone takes a turn and that's only fair, you know. The important thing is having a doctor to see the patients that's not you. And if you're getting external funding, they have to hire someone else. And actually because of this K, now we're able probably in a year and a half to hire another doctor because of external funding. And that's, you know what I'm saying? Like your external funding should help them budget for another doctor. Yeah. You can't do everything. Oh, and Mo, who I love, who's a much more nurturing person than I will, agreed to come on as associate program director with an overlap of about a year and a half, and then she'll take it. And so that worked. So I said, I'm fellowship director. I'm like, I can't do all of these and do a good job for them, so I have to let something go. You know what I mean?
It's just immensely helpful.
Oh, thank you.
So
Sorry.
much.
I'm like a big,
I feel like it's really helpful just to see the timeline of everything, and just to see from the perspective of someone who's a clinician and kind of how you made it all work.
yeah, but so
I don't know that we get to hear that perspective all that often.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm glad you guys came and asked nice questions. Good luck.